Alright guys, so we've started out, we chose a niche, and then we've also done the keyword research, so we have this um, niche down to something that we'll be able to work with. So the next step's going to be choosing a domain name. Now there's different schools of thought on this, but a couple things that I wanted you to look at was an exact match domain and like a brand name domain. First thing we're going to look at is an exact match domain. And generally what this is trying to have your keyword into your domain name. To ideally, for an exact match domain, you would have, like using our example before, for tuner cars. Ideally, you would come up with tunercars.com. I haven't looked, but I'm sure that's already taken. But what you can do to have, because the main thing is having tuner cars in your brand or in your domain name. So in a case like this, you could say tunercarshq.com. You could put iTunerCars, or tuner cars. Just add something to it like budget tuner cars. As long as you have the tunercars.com, then you have, it's not an exact match, but it's you do have the exact keyword phrase in your domain name. There's advantages and disadvantages to this, because the advantages would be you do get a little bit of a boost for your ranking. Actually, I think it's became to where it's barely even measurable, but there is still benefits to having, as far as SEO, there are benefits to having an exact match domain. That's probably the biggest, that, and like when somebody comes across your domain name and they see tunercars.com, then they're going to be like, oh hey, I bet that's about tuner cars. So those are two obvious advantages to using an exact domain. But now the disadvantage would be that, let's say like later you want to broaden out what you're doing, to where you're wanting to cover some more relative topics, but maybe it's not all tuner cars. Maybe you want a page on your website about muscle cars. Well, people will see tunercars.com and they will not relate that to muscle cars. So that's probably the disadvantages. Is yes, it's targeted, which is a good thing, but then you could find yourself with the problem of it being too targeted. So that's probably the biggest downside to having an exact match domain, and that and the fact that there's so many domains registered that it's hard to find something that doesn't sound stupid in a lot of cases. So if you're going to have tuner cars that rock and are awesome.com or something stupid where it's like a foot long, then you might want to look at some other options available to you. But that's kind of just the gist between the disadvantages and advantages of an exact match domain. Now let's take a look at brand name domain. And in this case, like we're still going to talk about tuner cars, but we think maybe down the road we might want to get into muscle cars and maybe the classic British cars like we talked about before. So then you could come out with something like powerfrenzy.com, and just by reading the name, you can't tell what this website's about. That is a disadvantage. But at the same time, the Power Frenzy would relate to auto enthusiasts, so they're not directly going to say, hey, Power Frenzy, what that, they're going to be like, well, what's that about? But once they're there, and Power Frenzy sounds, it's easier for them to share. It sounds, it has a kind of cool ring to it and everything. So, but probably the biggest advantage to brand name domain is the fact that you can go anywhere you want to with this. Like, you can take off with your tuner cars, you can come back with muscle cars, you can come back with car parts. You can, you can keep rolling and rolling, to where with tuner cars, you can do anything you want. You can broaden it out as much as you want. But if you're, check out our muscle cars at tunercars.com. Well, that's kind of like an oxymoron, because a muscle car is like, older model, heavy, bulky, gas guzzling, and then a tuner car is just the opposite, to where it's smaller, it's more efficient, and it's newer. So these are just things to consider. Either way, you're just wanting to start out with a plan of one way or the other. And right now is the perfect time. As you go through this course right now, this is the perfect time to pick whether you're going to choose an exact match domain or a brand name domain. So that's really all I got to say on this right now. We might touch on it a little bit later in a sub video or something like that, but for now, generally, you're just faced with a choice of either an exact match domain or a brand name domain. And the good thing, is the fact that either one will work, and you can be successful with either one. They both have, as you can see, they both have advantages and disadvantages. But go ahead and dive in and start, just listing, and go to, I would suggest Namecheap.com, and you can go into Namecheap.com and then just every name you think of, type it in and just do a search, and it'll tell you whether it's available or unavailable. So just run by there, and that way you can find out. You might fall in love with some name, you go over there, it's not even available. So but anyway, that's about all I got to say with that. If you got any questions or comments or anything, just post them below, and I sure appreciate you guys. I'll see you in module 1.4, and have an awesome day.